Nosleep, The Tall Grass by Lievin Crefcoeur. If I write this letter today, it's to clear my name. No, I did not start the fire on my property on the 8th of February in order to get the insurance money, nor am I responsible for the mysterious disappearance of Melinda Marshall, my wife and the mother of our child, and I don't repent for the permanent damage to the natural reserve behind my house. It is with the deepest regret that I must hide. The police will never believe what I found in the tall grass. They will think my escape is only a proof of culpability, yet I'm truly convinced that I've done what I should to preserve my life and the world from the abomination that lurks in the wild. All of this started last June when I bought this old cottage in northern Lincolnshire. After a recent burnout from my companion, we decided to find an isolated place to rest for a bit. We had some money left and resolved what we could afford on a one-year holiday. We negotiated the house for less than the rent of our current apartment in New York. The roof was leaking and the insulation was from the last century. Yet, the property seemed undervalued. It was nearly as if the owner wanted to sell this land. At first, this was one of the happiest times in my life. We slowly worked on the building. I, who never did anything with my hands, found a passion for manual work. It was also around that period I learnt I was going to be a father. Back in the States, we had been trying for several years unsuccessfully. We visited countless specialists looking for answers. They could only give us excuses and referrals to other doctors. One of them suggests hikes in the nature. Therefore, Melinda started to do long walks, at first with me, then alone, sometime leaving at dawn, then coming home long after the sun had set. The property had a vast yard where I initiated myself to the joy of gardening. Having always lived in a city, this was completely new for me. Alongside the renovation, I cleared the estate to install a vegetable garden and make fuel reserves for the winter. The inhabitants said it could be particularly harsh in the region. The last owner loathed going away from the house. The wilderness had invaded our mansion, and it was only with the first snow that I managed to get it back. Behind our land lies a vast marsh with reeds and tall grass. It was classified for the numerous species it harboured, but was avoided by locals and tourists alike. There were rumours of mysterious disappearances of young children. The authorities concluded that they must have drowned in one of the numerous water holes that lure in the vegetation. If you weren't careful, you might fall into one of those, never to be seen again. They were too small to let you swim easily when the thermal shock doesn't knock you unconscious. There's a famous saying with the inhabitants of the regions that people were driven insane before they could finish counting those cavities. When autumn came, the situation begins to degrade fast. The only way to the city was a 40-minute ride on an old trail, but the heavy rain was washing down the path, sometimes blocking it altogether for days. We started making fewer voyages. As the journey shortened, my wife was resting more and more. By the end of December, I was barely making one visit a week to the village. Melinda was staying nearly all day in bed. Her pregnancy was not going well. Our neighbours were whispering about the curse of the marsh, or some other hocus-pocus bullshit simple people of the region believe. She was supporting my trip less and less. So, on December 18th, I packed enough food for the winter and stopped leaving the house. It was around that time the sound started. At first, a faint howling far away, only in the dark of the night. Slowly, I began hearing it more and more often. Soon, even while the weak British sun was shining over the swamp. The noise was some sort of twisted mating call, a reminiscent of the era before humankind ruled the world, a time when monstrosities hunted early humans after nightfall. The sound awakened this ancestral fear. The last inhabitant of the house abandoned an old rifle in the attic. I repaired it and started practicing shooting each occasion I get. In 1 month I could aim at a tin can 100 feet away. The gun never left my side since the howling became a continuous moan. I wasn't the only one affected by this call of the marsh. My wife, already disturbed by the pregnancy, was now shouting, mimicking this disturbing song. Trying to get out to make it stop, I had to lock the doors and keep the key around my neck. After I found Melinda half naked in the garden, marching towards the swamp one night. From the last week of January, my whole dream turned into a nightmare. I was mostly not sleeping, spending my time awake and anxious of what will come next. I honestly wish that I could say that what I experienced next was a hallucination, that the lack of sleep and the isolation and the hysteria I was experiencing disturbed my mind. Unfortunately, I assure you I was at my full mental capacity on this awful night. I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke up, I was alone in my bed. As a reflex, I looked for the key. It wasn't there, so I quickly grabbed my rifle and rushed down the stairs to the door. It was wide bloody open, footprints in the snow leading towards the marsh. The moon was full, and I could see as clearly as daylight. I ran as fast as I could until I heard a scream coming from the house. I froze in horror as I realised that the scream wasn't coming from the building, but rather from the swamp. Another yell, far more terrifying. Melinda was going into labour, and she was with God knows what, without me. I followed the cry up to the roof, the trail of mud from the doorstep leading the same way only quickened my steps. It was dark in the attic. I had blocked all the windows and only a small ray of moonlight was filtering through the heavy board. The obscurity is the only thing that allowed me to keep my sanity. I saw 2 forms in the back of the room. One was my wife, screaming as she was giving birth. The other had a humanoid appearance but was clearly not human. He was dripping water on the ground and singing a horrible song I heard for the last month. I shoot. Twice. The chamber was quiet again, yet the blood was rushing through my brain was louder than anything before. Slowly, I closed the door and walked downstairs to the reserve. I picked the oil supply and spread it all over the house up to the wetland. Then I set it all on fire. I was watching the building burn with all that I love when I hear the song anew. Not the same, a much sadder melody, as if the creature was grieving. The howling echoes through the marsh. I ran out of there. I'm stalked by this unholy song. Even today, I cannot forget the sound following me as I ran and ran. I said I wasn't responsible for the disappearance of Melinda May. I read the journal. I know they didn't find any bodies in the house. I did kill Melinda, but I did not move her corpse. However, I didn't murder the mother of my child because that thing that she was giving birth to looked exactly like the monster standing next to her before her death.